we have had momentous developments in our neighborhood in Bangladesh, where there have been agitations over the last few weeks or months, and which led to a situation where the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, who is also the daughter of the founder of Bangladesh, she has had to run away. She has now taken shelter in India. It, of course, very dramatic developments, and we are discussing this special situation in this special discussion in the IDEM Rasala Update joint program. And to discuss this issue, this situation, we have with us Subhajit Bagchi, who is a very senior journalist. Of course, Bagchi and I were colleagues together in the Hindu group at one point of time. He worked with various national and international organizations, including the BBC. And of course, Subhajit, welcome to this program. And of course, you are a very keen observer of Bangladesh for a very long time. So, what do you make out of the situation? How has these dramatic events happened?
Of course, as also I think the Indian Foreign Minister has said today in the Parliament that, these thing was building up for a while. And we could all sense that. We could sense that sitting in India, sitting in Bengal particularly, and of course in Bangladesh, that this has been building up. Because, while it is said, there are many things said about Bangladesh. One regular allegation is that it's a deeply Islamic country. But the fact is, above every other identity, the people of Bangladesh have a very fundamental identity. That is, they're very democratic people. Because they are the democracy through a war where millions have died. And so there's a cost to their democracy. And they cannot forget that. So when that democracy is challenged, whether it is challenged by a so-called secular party or an Islamic party, it doesn't matter. Whoever challenges it. It was challenged earlier during Jamaat BNP's time, and they all went to the other side, as in the Sheikh Hasina side. I remember in 2006, 2007, 2008, around the time. Now, when there have been 3 elections, and one of which I have covered, that and we have seen that these elections are definitely not regular elections. They are now even India accepts, Indian think tank and policymakers accept that these were really hugely manipulated elections. Now that went on, and in addition to that, there have been serious attack against the opposition. Most of them are either jailed or they are in exile, and many of the Jamaat leaders, we have to understand Jamaat Islami is a political outfit. Jamaat Islami was associated with, it's a mainstream political party. So that has been banned, and there have been war criminals tribunal in which their major leaders been executed, exiled, put in jail, all these things here. So in a situation like that, there were grievances. And then after the COVID, their economy slowed down. If you look at last 15 years, the growth was about 6.57%. But this has come down to something like 5%. Slowing of economy, slowing of the global market, the export market slowed down, which is the main market for Bangladesh. And, there was inflation. There's massive inflation in Bangladesh. I was there in last November, and there was massive inflation. And there was unemployment. So all these things put together, people kind of were extremely displeased with this government. And does it all happen when the students hit the street? And as it happens, I don't think the quota movement is the only reason for what has happened. Because quota movement happened in 2018, and Sheikh Hasina at that point in time was...
Subhajit, can you just throw some light on this quota movement and what exactly it means? Because, even now, it is not very clear in large parts of India as to what exactly is the trigger for this agitation. Can you just explain it?
Yeah, there has been a quota for the government jobs, and these government jobs are very good government jobs in Bangladesh. They pay very well. And in this job, there's a quota of 56%, out of which 30% goes to the family members of the freedom fighters. Now, this is where the question mark is, because it has been alleged by the student leaders that the certificate as a freedom fighter, you can easily get these days. You pay some money and you get a certificate, and then you get, on basis of that, you get a very nice, very good job in the Bangladesh
Yeah.
civil services. So,
Right.
so there was a massive agitation in 2018, and the government accepted, the Sheikh Hasina, same government accepted that it was wrong, and it was reverted. When the High Court said on June 5th that no, the same quota system it was brought back. It was a bit like Manipur situation when there was
Yeah.
there's a court judgment and there was problem started. But
Right.
where I think why the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, made a mistake, Sheikh Hasina. That is, this decision was taken in the High Court on June 5th until July 15th. There was nothing. There was no movement. I mean, there were discussions, and the students are very keen to talk to the Prime Minister. But nothing happened. There was a kind of a stalemate, but there was no violence. And then on July 5th, suddenly the Prime Minister said that who are we supposed to give the quotas? Not the family members of the freedom fighters, but to the family members of the Rajakats. Now, when you say Rajakat is a very hated word in Bangladesh because it means volunteers to the Pakistani army in 1971. So when you say to the family members, children and grandchildren of Rajakats, it means the students of today. So they took huge offense. So that was, I say, with the ignition point when everything flared up, and from 16, 17, this thing was halted. But this was, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There were other grievances which were neglected for a long time. But even now, the government could have diffused it simply by not using the word Rajakat, and simply by calling them to talk to a table to talk to them, and they could have refused, because actually, if you look at it, the chronology, the government also appealed against the order. But then government should have conveyed that in first place, that we are against it, we are going to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court reversed. By July 21st, it was removed. It was totally quashed.
Right.
It was removed. Now the quota is only 7%. But
Right.
what happened? After this, the agitation didn't stop. Because they realized now the next demand is to remove the Prime Minister, and that's the only way to address all the past grievances. And they went on with it, and for the next 14 days, they managed to do that. So now the student leaders are one of the most powerful bodies in this formation of this interim government, whatever form it takes.
So, but the army is also going to play a very big role, because it's the army who finally kind of gave the marching orders to Sheikh Hasina, to the army, which said that you have 45 minutes and you have to remit office. So, what is the role and what is the kind of collaboration that is going to be possible between the army top brass and the student movement leaders?
Well, see, the army, I must say, in first place, the people of Bangladesh has huge faith in army.
Okay.
They always played a proactive role, though there have been army leaders, there have been authoritarian leaders in Bangladesh, and all that has happened. But what is significant is army is playing a balancing role here. The first statement made by the Chief of Army Staff, Waqar Zaman, that General Waqar Zaman, that we are not going to take over. So army is so far playing a very positive role. It has very clearly said that we are not going to take over or anything of that sort. We are just going to. It's not a military coup happening here. It is like we are there for a period of time. As long as this interim government doesn't take over. And yesterday I was talking to the Ambassador Sarwajit Chakravarti, who was previously the High Commissioner of India in Bangladesh in 2007-8, and he said that there is full confidence in this interim government. Whoever takes over, they will manage to bring back, after a few days as they take over, they will manage to bring back law and order. And not only that, they will be, they will be able to stabilize the country and then look forward, which is, of course, how to conduct a free and fair election. That is the bigger challenge for the interim government. But now we can see that this interim government is taking shape. There will be differences. Of course, there are various stakeholders and they have opposing point of views. So there will be differences between the students and the political parties, even army and the civil society and all those things. As it happens, it will be a body of, I guess, not less than 50 to 20 or more than that members. So there will be differences of opinion. But with that, I mean, that was lacking in Bangladesh. There was no difference of opinion, right? And that is why they have reached here. So they want difference of opinion, and that is good for the country, I guess.
Yeah. So, but the Awami League has been kept out of all negotiations at this point of time. I mean, Sheikh Hasina's party itself. she is
Yeah.
not, that they are not part of this negotiations. Do you think that
Yes. Yeah.
that's a positive sign? Is that a positive sign? I mean,
I
it is.
would prefer, in Indian context, I can say whatever happens. We have seen that, in such situations, you would also get the party which was so long in power, and there is substantial support for the party as of now on the ground. I'm sure there is substantial support. So it would have been better. I would have been comfortable to see one or two members from their party. But it is not there because, Bangladesh politics is a very polarized politics. So we do not see it there. Like, compared to that, I mean, I was thinking exactly this question. And when I was thinking about it, I was also thinking that how the Indian foreign minister briefed the opposition leader Rahul Gandhi in the parliament. So these kind of things, these are small gestures, but it makes a huge difference to the people. They always tend to think that the country is united. Whatever the difference is there, the country remains united, etc. So that has been lacking in Bangladesh. And as I have written in a piece which was published today in a newspaper, that, they perhaps need to listen to the great Nelson Mandela speeches in 1994 when the transfer of power was taking place in similar situation in South Africa, and he was repeatedly talking about saying one thing, that is, justice has to be delivered. A lot of things happen, a lot of crimes have taken place, a lot of injustice there. So justice has to take place. But we should not forget reconciliation. There has to be reconciliation as well. So there has to be justice and reconciliation in Bangladesh.
Yeah, looking back at Sheikh Hasina's record, there is one stream of opinion which says that that she was her track record. Of course, we have an article in today's in some of the Indian major newspapers in India, which says that that while the economic track record of Sheikh Hasina was good, there was a huge democracy deficit in the governance. Would you put it that way, or but you are also talking about how the economic problems have also shooted up over the last couple of years?
Yes, I mean, if we look at the all the records, I mean, since COVID, I mean, their foreign currency reserve was like really in a very, very bad state. Their GDP growth rate slowed down. The export market slowed down. And of course, the Sheikh Hasina, one major mistake that she committed, I think she antagonized both China and America, which is a problem. I mean, and there are differences between countries always, but publicly you do not make statements against a country. I mean, Sheikh Hasina has repeatedly made public statements against the United States. Now in the Bangladesh papers are writing, was that the right thing to do for the head of a state? Someone who is running the head of the government, actually, the head of the government. I mean, what was the right thing to do? And yes, of course, the America has its interest in South Asia. China has its interest in South Asia, and she continuously had to, being a small country, she had to balance between the two. But then something went wrong somewhere, and there's no people support from inside. If there were democratic initiatives, if there were elections and if she had the people support, end of the day, then perhaps she could have seen through all these. And she had the people support, enormous people support for 10 years at least. And that's why she could manage, all these countries, powerful countries around the world. But now that people support has gone, as the economy has, well, if not collapsed, it is in a very bad shape. So that is there. And of course, democratic deficit is there as we have discussed.
Right. Well, there is also one stream of opinion which says that that she was getting too dependent on India and the Indian leadership. In fact, she had made repeated visits to India, even unscheduled visits to India in the last few months. So, was there a greater dependence on India, and was that also a factor which worked against her?
Well, I'm not sure if it is the fundamental reason which is why she is in trouble. She is in trouble because she has created a situation. Because, I beg to differ with many people. That is, the Bangladesh people are fundamentally against India. They're not fundamentally against India. They are against India because India was not making any noise after seeing these elections, the way this has been conducted with Indian observers. Now, you talk to Indian observers, if they privately talk to you, they will tell you that there was no election. I spoke to one of them and they told me there was no election. But when it's coming to giving reports, these same observers are saying, oh, that was all right election. It was about 40% polling, etc. Now, some of the Indian think tanks, Indian observers have started saying in the last, since January 2024, that there was no election. There's not more than 10% polling or even less than that, much less than that.
Mhm.
So this has been going on. So people are not anti-India. Definitely not anti-India. India's business with Bangladesh has gone up like several times. It is $15 billion. Official business is $15 billion between India and Bangladesh. And who is benefiting from that? Of course, India is benefiting. Bangladesh is benefiting as well. There is no doubt about it. So they are on a growth path together. And Sheikh Hasina has done that for the country. So this is a great thing for Bangladesh. They are on the growth path. That is one side of the story. But the other side, as I said, Bangladesh people are democracy-loving people. So tomorrow, if any party goes against their will, against democracy, they will watch them for a period of time and then they will go against them. Now, the whole point is Goa's dependence on India. There's no doubt about it. Particularly when it comes to politics, when it comes to these democratic things, and also regarding trade. But India was also dependent heavily on Bangladesh. So India, when this question was counter-questioned, like, why India was putting all the eggs in one basket, which is Awami League's basket, and people started believing that India is not for Bangladesh, but for Awami League and Sheikh Hasina. This is a perception which has continued to grow in Bangladesh, and that is why people are turning against India. But if tomorrow India gives certain messages, it starts talking, and I'm sure India is already talking to BNP, talking to Jamaat-e-Islami and other parties. Now, once this solidifies, I'm sure this BNP is not the old BNP of 2001, or this Jamaat is not the 2001 Jamaat. They also have realized that, if you go against India, which they actually did in 2001, 2006, I covered the Home Ministry at that point in time in Delhi, and the Foreign Ministry as well for BBC, and I know that at that point in time, what was the situation in India's northeast? What was the security situation in India's northeast? India can't forget that. So today's Jamaat, today's BNP, let's come out of it. They do not want to derail totally the negotiations that they are having and the growth that they are having. Of course, there will be one or two issues, or maybe there are more than one or two issues that they need to redraw the certain memorandum of understanding, certain agreements, etc. That will happen. But overall, I do not think the situation will change. And India, as I said, India was also dependent on Bangladesh. India was particularly in one factor, India was very much dependent on Bangladesh, and that is Tista River water sharing. It is not about giving water to Tista. This is about the Chinese offer to Bangladesh, which is, we are going to give you as many billion required and we'll solve this problem. Now, one moment that happens, what happens? The Tista River barrage or Tista River reservoir is going to be there in Malda district. I mean, on the border of India and Bangladesh in Malda district, just few kilometers below the Chicken Neck in Siliguri, which is a 20-kilometer stretch. Now, that is within the firing, not only just firing range, I mean, it all kinds of range, from Doklam, where possibly China has a position. So this is a very tricky area. If China develops a project like Tista in the border, and it is so close to Siliguri corridor, and then what is the security situation? And this is something which India is today, I'm sure India is very bothered about it. Now, if tomorrow the next dispensation start talking about Tista River water sharing and they follow up, I think India's team already went there and started talking about the Tista thing in a concrete manner, because they realized that they cannot delay it indefinitely. So if tomorrow India's plan is rejected, which was signed in the last, which they discussed in the last meeting in Delhi, Bangladesh Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister. I mean, if it is rejected totally by the next dispensation and China is given access to that Tista sharing, then it is a matter of great concern. The other matter of great concern is, of course, the Chinese access to Indian Ocean, which is another issue of India. And of course, the American access to St. Martin's Island. This is another issue that bothers India. So India, someone just asked me that why India was putting all the eggs in one basket. I said India didn't have much of an option. Now, one may say that, well, should you start thinking out of the box? Should you come out of it and start putting some more eggs in other basket? But then in foreign policy, you do not do that. I mean, America started changing their foreign policy after 9/11. After Afghan thing happened, after Afghanistan debacle happened for America, they started rethinking on their foreign policy. So foreign policy doesn't change. Foreign policy is not science. There is some invention and then you start talking about it, or some social site. It happens, and then there's a reaction to it, and then you eventually change it. It is more like the law or the judiciary. Something happens, and then you take it up. You need amendments, etc., etc. So you do not do anything out of box, because if you do something out of box and tomorrow it fails, then what? Then what? How
It will be completely counterproductive. Yeah. So, to sum up what you are saying, I mean, you say that the army involvement in Bangladesh is not exactly very negative. It can turn out to be positive, and they can come up with a situation as a system, or come up with a setup which is kind of acceptable to large sections of Bangladeshi population, and which addresses the concerns of the Bangladeshi people. But at the same time, you're saying the larger question of the two big powers, the China and US, trying to make use of situation to maneuver their own position, kind of maneuver themselves into a larger position of strength in relation to Bangladesh. That risk is there, and that is something which should cause concern for India. I want to end by asking you just one more question. There's one stream of opinion which feels that that the way this whole thing has unfolded, and given the track record of the Awami League, this is a kind of tension between Islamic fundamentalism and secularism. Do you see it that way?
No, I do not see it that way. Well, there are initial reactions.
Yeah.
There are initial reactions, and that always happens. I remember when after every election in Bengal, the ruling party here start beating up the opposition, and it continues for 15 days. When the chief minister gives messages and all that, it comes down. It has been happening in Bengal for ages, So after any victory, this will happen, and this is a very big victory, no doubt about it, for the student leaders. So there are reactions. There are reactions against the symbols and icons which are neutral, which are secular in Bangladesh. There have been the statues of Mujibur Rahman being desecrated. Now, while that has been done, I mean, it has also been pointed out that, the students have been singing songs, which were all the liberation war songs. I mean, it's symbols. And there was one placard which says that, army should go to barracks in both the hills and the plains. Now, for the first time, a large section of Bangladesh, the students, who are predominantly Muslims, are saying the army should go back in the hills, which is in Chittagong Hill Track, where the tribals are located and where there have been severe repression. So when the community, predominantly the Muslims, are talking about against the repression in the hill tracts, and they are standing hand in hand with the minority Hindus, ethnic minorities, and other minorities, it gives a different signal. It's a new generation. We have to understand that. I mean, you look at the number of temples. I mean, there are a few temples which have been attacked, they have been torched. I agree, and I get the videos. But at the same time, there are a large number of temples being protected by the Madrasa Students Union, by the Madrasa students. I mean, there are also videos of that. So why you only say that this is like Islamic fundamentalism versus this and that? Also, you have to understand Jamaat-e-Islami may have certain. Jamaat-e-Islami is a conservative political party. But how radical is Jamaat-e-Islami? We have to, in India, we need to make this difference between a conservative party, a radical party, and a terrorist party.
Right.
So out there, we hardly, I mean, these differences are made in Europe, but these differences are not made in India. All are radical, all are militant, all are terror. I mean, this is not the situation. I mean, there are a lot of sensible people within Jamaat, a lot of sensible people within PNP. They understood in last 20 years that what is the cost of antagonizing in stay out of power for 20 years. So I do not think that will be the case, one. And two, I mean, if you look at their student leadership, of course they lack experience, but so long they have shown tremendous maturity.
Right.
Tremendous maturity. So I am sure that there will be a middle path, and they will reconcile. They will reconcile not just with themselves. Give them time to reconcile with themselves first, and then they will reconcile with India. And I don't think that in 2001, when BJP Jamaat-led coalition came to power, four-party coalition came to power, there was a huge amount of attacks against the minorities, against the army leaguers, etc. I don't think it is going to be repeated this time. And as Ambassador Chakraborty also said, that this will be brought under control. It will possibly not be like 2001.
Okay. Thanks, Ajit. So I think you understand a very, very concise picture of what's happening in Bangladesh. And of course, you'll have to keep watching this space and the developments and how it develops. But you seem to be very hopeful that the collaboration between the army and the student leaders will lead to something very positive and creative. Anyway, let us see how it develops. Thank you very much for joining us.